I'm still here, yeah.
Hi, Art.
Okay.
So I'm going to hand
Hi, Nancy.
the microphone over to Nancy Ukai, who was a discussant earlier today, to begin our final section, which is a celebration of the life and work of Art Hansen, who's joining us by Zoom. We're starting off with a slideshow, so Art can see us, but we can't see him yet. So hello to Art, and here's to Nancy.
Hi. Hello, Art.
Hi.
You can see us, we can't see you, but Chizuko Omori, Emiko Omori, your former student Wendy Ng, Barbara Takei, many of us are here, and we're going to start off showing some slides of your work and your life, and I'll occasionally ask you to comment, if you will. Okay? Thank you so much. Art Hansen is Professor Emeritus of History at California State University, Fullerton. That is, he's retired. He's past director of the university's Lawrence de Graaf Center for Oral and Public History and past senior historian at the Japanese American National Museum. Thank you so much for being here. We're so honored to gather here today to appreciate and honor our friend Art Hansen. So how did a kid, next Max, how did it, so Art is one of he is the most prolific book reviewer for the Nichi Bei News, and we're so honored to have him share his knowledge with us. These are some of the books that he's written, and his most recent one, which we are selling today, is a Nikkei Harvest, which is also the Nichi Bei Foundation's very first published book. Next, please, Max. So we're going to ask, how did a kid from Hoboken, New Jersey, who grew up eating hot dogs on Coney Island, he loved taking the bus to New York from New Jersey to watch Joe DiMaggio and the Yankees. He remembers watching Jackie Robinson break the color line for the Brooklyn Dodgers. How did he get into Japanese American history and acts of resistance in American concentration camps? So today, later, the writer, author, filmmaker, Frank Abe, who, of course, you just heard earlier, will interview Art about his work, his contributions, and his distinguished career. And we're going to just look right now for about 10 minutes about his early childhood and days in academia. Okay, next, please. Oh, sorry. No, let's just stay here for a minute. So Art was born in 1938 at St. Mary's Hospital in Hoboken, New Jersey. He grew up in Hoboken in a small town called Little Ferry. At another time, the family was quite adventurous. They lived on a freight barge that his father plied on the Hudson River via the Erie Canal to Buffalo, New York. The second photo in the middle shows Art in 1975 when he was teaching history at Cal State Fullerton in California. And then the most recent photo in color shows Art in 2016 when he was at the Nichi Bei's Film of Remembrance on a panel to discuss the film A Bitter Legacy, directed by Claudia Karayanagi, who's there. Raise your hand, Claudia. Hi, Art. Next, please. Art was the second of two boys born to Anna Mae Stover Hansen and Håkan Adolf Hansen. So you see the family on the left. Art's brother Roy was 2 years older. The two boys were inseparable. They were also complementary, Art says. Roy was solitary. Art was more social and group-oriented. Roy was an outfielder in baseball. Art was an infielder. Roy was a studious, conscientious student. Art was a self-described class clown. He recalls having to wear a dense cap in the corner of the classroom. Thank goodness he didn't let that shaming deter him from a lifetime of learning and scholarship. Next, please. In 1949, when Art was 11 years old, the family moved to Goleta. So Art's mother, Anna, was of Irish ancestry, born on St. Patrick's Day. She was a licensed vocational nurse. Håkan, Art's father, was the oldest of 9 in a Norwegian immigrant family. He played the mandolin, the harmonica, and he studied higher mathematics. His occupation was sign painter and carpenter. Håkan died, sadly, at age 53 of a heart attack while driving home from a construction site. Art was a worker. He was introduced to various jobs by his father, and in California, he paid for his college doing things he wrote, like cleaning the swimming pools of wealthy families in Montecito. He was a substitute teacher. Art, I'm just going to ask you, where did you get your work ethic?
My work ethic, it started with sports. I was very much into sports, and I was very active and a leader, and it's carried over into my academic work, that I go about things very intensely. So that's basically the long and short of it.
Art's a big sports fan. I didn't realize that your dedication to working so hard, researching, writing, devoting hours to participation for the Nichi Bei and other committees was born in sports. So Art's first trip to Manzanar was in 1972 with Cal State Fullerton's history department, his colleagues Jack Ellenboss and Kenji Yada. Kenji was at Manzanar as a child, and you can see Kenji and Art in later years. They became best friends. Can you see that slide, Art?
That's right. Kenji was 13 when he went to Manzanar, and in 1972, it was the first time he'd been back there since 1945. So some of his colleagues, myself and two others, accompanied him up to Manzanar to be able to have his first, personal reunion.
Next, please. Art, will you talk about your pilgrimage with students in 1973?
Yes, 1973 was when they put the plaque up at Manzanar, famous plaque that spoke truth to power, called the places like Manzanar concentration camps, said that they were due to hysteria, racism, and economic exploitation. And there was a huge crowd of people at this particular pilgrimage. And my students came up with me. And there's only one student in the Japanese American project there who is half Japanese American. The rest are Hakujins like me and everything. And we're there with, sitting around, and we were having a little picnic before we got involved in the pilgrimage.
So in 1973, that was only the fourth year of the Manzanar pilgrimage. You were pioneers.
Yes, that was an early time.
You mentioned, is this around the time you were getting involved with oral histories?
It was. I started the Japanese American Oral History Project at Fullerton in 1972.
And actually, you've mentioned how you actually were hand binding the oral histories in the special collections room. You did everything, the interviews, the binding.
Yes, we didn't have any money, and so we just had to do everything. We did a lot of self-bound books and things. One of them became quite famous. It was called Voices Long Silent, and it really was answering the concern that people had that the voice of not only the non-Japanese American community, but the Japanese American community itself was rather quiet about this. And what we were, Betty Mitson and I, who wrote the book, were emphasizing were that people were speaking out at long last.
Tell us about the time the police came when you were hand binding your books.
We were binding the books in the library late at night, and the library was closed, and we'd finished binding our books, and then we were walking out of the library, and all of a sudden a campus policeman came in, and he said, "Reach for the sky," and he pointed a gun at us because he thought we might be stealing very valuable things from the library special collection department. Once he realized that that wasn't the case, he dropped the heat, and we were safe and happy again.
The life of a scholar is not without adventure. Next, please. Can you tell us about this, where Togo Tanaka is speaking at a lecture series you organized in 1973 at UC Irvine?
Yes, this was the first lecture series that had ever been held on this topic of the World War II Japanese American incarceration. And we held this lecture series through the University of California, Irvine Extension Program. And we had about 200, 250 people that signed up for this. Most of them were Nikkei. There were sprinkling of Hakujin and other people from different backgrounds, but they were mostly Japanese Americans, and they were very anxious to hear all these lecturers speak about it. And so we had this like 10 lecturers come in and give these talks, and it was a ringing success. It was a great success, and it broke the ground for things. One of the people that spoke was Togo Tanaka, who was a documentary historian at Manzanar. Before the war, he had been the editor of the Rafu Shimpo. He was a Phi Beta Kappa from UCLA, a really bright person. And I used a lot of his stuff when I wrote my first article, which was on the Manzanar riot, with Dave Hacker, and we reframed it from riot to revolt because we thought riot was a mischaracterization.
So 50 years ago, you were doing this important work, which has contributed to the place where we are now, where Frank's book, of course, is covering the literature of Japanese incarceration, Japanese American incarceration. Next, please, Max. So here we are decades later at the Manzanar pilgrimage in 2002, where Art was the keynote speaker. And among some of the people in these photographs are people who are here today, including Barbara Takei. And there you are, Art with Martha Nakagawa and Sue Kunitomi Embry. Would you just like to say something briefly about this?
Well, Sue Kunitomi Embry was the first person I ever interviewed, Japanese American that I interviewed, actually of any background, and that was quite a successful interview, and it led to a friendship between Sue and I that was very close. We did a number of books together, and including the Manzanar martyr, Harry Ueno, a book about Harry Ueno, the Manzanar martyr. Betty Mitzen worked with Sue and I. And in any event, Barbara Takei, I went up to the first two, with Sue Embry, we stayed at Barbara Takei's house in Sacramento, and then we went up to the Tule Lake pilgrimages. James O'Mora, who I wrote a book about called The Nisei Naysayer, he was one of the few people of Japanese ancestry even that supported the draft resistors when they started resisting at Heart Mountain. And that was an organized draft resistance movement. Great film about it by Frank Abe, Conscience and the Constitution, a fabulous film and everything. And I got to know all of the draft resistors, Frank Emmy and Yoshi Korimiya, and then I edited a book, Yoshi Korimiya's memoir called Beyond the Betrayal. And and I got to work closely with one of his daughters, Gail Korimiya, and we did things together over the last couple of years, giving talks and stuff like that. But that's the backstory on that.
Next, please, Max.
And that picture of my wife, that's my second wife, Debbie, and Debbie keeps me alive. Debbie, unfortunately, she's just had a bad fall, and she's fractured her shoulder, and she fractured her right shoulder. She's right-handed, so she can't do very much now. So even though we both have COVID, and I've got cancer, I've become the go-to guy now for temporarily to help out on things. But Debbie has been my lifeblood and has helped so much to keep me alive after my heart attack in 2017. And then last year, my diagnosis for cancer.
Gambatte, Art. Two giants in the field, Art Hansen, historian Roger Daniels, and the Rafu Shimpo's front page article about Art's retirement in 2008. Next, please, Max. Art received the Sue Kunitomi Embry Legacy Award in 2014 and was congratulated by Professor Emeritus Lane Hirabayashi, history professor of UCLA. And just wanted to share with you a photo of Art when he was a basketball player for the history department at Cal State Fullerton, and pop quiz. Which one is Art? If you guess the guy in the center with the brown shirt, you get an extra point. Next, please, Max. And another bonus question. Which one is Art? This is Janum's Christmas party in 2004. Art is a Superman, but he doesn't time travel. That picture of the Heart Mountain Christmas in 1944 shows a different Santa Claus. Next, please. Thank you very much, Art. And this shows the other books that he will be talking about with Frank Emmy. Thank you.
Thank you, Nancy.
Well, thank you, Art, for all you've done. And thank you, Nancy, for that introduction to Art's history. So, Art,
I can't hear you, Frank. Get closer to the mic, would you?
Okay. How's that?
Okay.
To understand Art Hansen, I think his accomplishments, I think we have to understand the bad old days of the 1960s and 70s, Art. Going back to those early days, we only had a few books available on Japanese American history. One of them was, the only popular history was, Bill Hosokawa's Nisei, the Quiet Americans. And in the academic press, of course, Roger Daniels had just published Concentration Camps USA. Can you, Art, talk a little bit about what inspired you to see oral history of the Japanese American experience as the thing you wanted to focus on, that the job that needed to be done?
Well, when I was a senior in college at UC Santa Barbara in 1960, I was in a sociology course taught by a visiting professor from Harvard named Dr. Zimmerman. And she said that the course, they didn't have Asian American studies then. The course was called Minority Group Relations. And we had to write a term paper in there. And she gave the topics of some potential term papers we could write. And one was dealing with the Japanese American incarceration during World War II. And since I had a number of Sansei friends that I went to school with, and they never talked about it, I was curious about it. And so I wrote this paper for the class, and it was a dreadful paper. I read articles that were then in the Newsweek and then Life and all these other magazines, and they all called the incarceration a blessing in disguise for Japanese Americans. And it broke up their ghettos. It got them into places where they could be football stars, could be cheerleaders, and everything else. And so you know what I titled my paper? Blessing in Disguise. I couldn't even be original on the title. Anyway, it stuck in my craw. And I was then studying British and American intellectual history, and I wrote a dissertation on it. And when I finished that dissertation in 1972, I said, I want to go back to the subject of the Japanese American incarceration. By then I'd gotten to know Kenji Yada. I talked to him almost daily about his experiences in Manzanar. And so I was ready to do work, in that field. And I'll tell you, I was a sports nut, but I've never had any sort of fascination, anything quite close to it in studying the World War II Japanese American experience, especially studying the resistance mounted by people of Japanese ancestry to their oppression by the U.S. government in conjunction with the leadership of the Japanese American Citizens League.
Art, thanks for that. By the way, can you turn your camera on at this time so that we can see you?
See what?
Can you turn your camera on, Art, on your computer?
We'll start my video?
No. They say...
What am I supposed to hit? It says start my video or later.
Start video. Start video.
Okay.
Big cheer. You can hear the big cheer, Art. Now we can finally see you. And oh, poor Debbie, look at your right shoulder.
Yeah, I know. I'm pathetic.
Here's my Tule Lake baseball shirt. I was given this by Hiroshi Shimizu, who knew I was a big baseball fan, and he's a big sports fan and was a great high school football player up in San Francisco, as well as later a very accomplished tennis player. But he gave me this, and this is the first time I've ever worn it. So I wanted to wear it for this event.
Wonderful. Now, you hope you could hear the applause when you showed your T-shirt, and the applause when we finally saw your face. So now we can see you, Art. There we see. Yes, indeed. Okay. So, Art, I want to bring us to the present moment now. After all the accomplishments you've had, you've now published a new book called A Nikkei Harvest, and it's a collection of your book reviews. And I've called it an essential roadmap to the ever-growing body of literature comprising the Japanese-American mosaic. Now that you had the book in your hands, Art, how do you feel about the new book and now that you've seen it in print?
I think the Nichi Bei Foundation did a wonderful job, and I thank them from the bottom of my heart for what they've done. Picked up the whole tab for it and everything, got it out, lavished a lot of time and attention on it. And let me give you a little backstory on the book.
Yes.
I tried to get this book published by two other presses before the Nichi Bei Foundation salvaged it. And both of them didn't even look at the manuscript. They said it was a non-starter. We would never publish a book that consisted largely of book reviews. And so I was disappointed by that. And I did a little research and I wanted to find out, have there been any books that consisted of book reviews? I found two of them, both of them by geniuses, which I was far short of the mark. But one of them in particular caught my attention. It was by Michiko Kakutani. And Michiko Kakutani had been a editor of the New York Times book review section. And she worked for the Times from 1983 to 2017. And her aunt is Yoshiko Uchida, who was a children's and a young adult writer, and also a New York Yankee fan, I'll have to add. But she was in Tanforan and Topaz, and then she wrote a series of books, Desert Exile and Journey to Topaz and Journey Home, that have become classics. So this book that Michiko Kakutani wrote was called Ex Libris, and it's got the most beautiful book plates inside of it, all of them done by a woman named Dana Tanamachi. But Michiko Kakutani is a brilliant writer, and this book sort of emboldened me to keep trying to get this published. And so now it finally has been published. And I kept telling those people that were refusing things, it's more than just book reviews. I've written essays about 9 different areas of Japanese American history as prefaces to the book reviews. And then I've lumped the book reviews according to these topics. And the topics are like people and then family and community and resistance and redress and international Nikkei and the like. And so I think the book really, why it's important is because why it really captured my attention so much was that the Japanese American community in recent years has gone from being the most populous of the Asian American communities in the United States to being one of the smallest. And yet, even though it's the smallest, the proliferation of books continues to just pour out. And a lot of it has to do because of the incarceration experience, which is still not very well understood by most of the country. Still not understood. They understood the silver lining part of the story. They understand the fact of Go for Brokers, the military group, and they understand the happy sort of things, so-called, the fun they allegedly had in camp. But the darker sides, they didn't want to go there. And I wanted to go there and make sure I could shine some light on this darker spot. And that's what I've spent the last half century essentially doing.
Yes, and the body of your work has really been a foundation upon which we all can stand. I mean, really stand on your shoulders with a lot of the seminal work you've done on Manzanar in particular. You did a book called Barbed Voices most recently, and you've been so productive in your retirement years, if you will, with Barbed Voices and the Manzanar Mosaic. I want to talk about...
You know what, Frank? The reason I've been productive now and not a little bit before that is because I spent 20 years editing Nisei Naysayer, the memoir of James O'Mora. Nobody else wanted to do it. I stepped up and did it. Took a long time. Everybody say, when's that damn book going to be through? It was a hard book to write, hard book to edit, and I had a lot of other things on my plate at the time. But I got that done finally, and it's only received one academic review in a history journal. One.
Yes.
I think that the number one resistor in the United States among the Japanese American community was James O'Mora. And that book hasn't got the time and the attention, the critical attention that it deserves. And he told the Tolan Committee in 1942, has the Gestapo come to America? And the Gestapo was coming to America. And he fought the JCL leadership against their cooperation with the US government in the incarceration thing. But that book, until Jonathan Van Harlem did a review of it a couple of years ago in the Southern California Quarterly, had never been given a full dress review. So now, it has.
Well, I think that James O'Mora, had he been alive, would have really appreciated the work you did on that. I mean, O'Mora did not trust very many people, so I think it says a lot that he entrusted you with the job of, keeping his legacy alive.
Yeah, I think he trusted me. We met at a conference in 1983 in Salt Lake City, and we were on a bus together, and the shuttle bus taking us out to the university from the Marriott Hotel out to the University of Utah campus. And he was sitting in front of me, and he turned around. I looked at his name. I said, are you the James O'Mora? He said, the very one. And I said, boy, would I like to interview you? So later on, Jimmy was an odd kind of guy, to say the least.
Yes.
But Jimmy one time flew into Ontario Airport, not too far from Cal State Fullerton, and the chairman of the history department said, I've just had a call from an elderly gentleman at the Ontario Airport, and he said you were going to interview him. I said, I never told him where I was going to interview, when I was going to interview him. I said, I'd like to interview him sometime. So anyway, we then made arrangements, and he came out. He stayed at my house for 5 days, and every morning he was up before I was, sitting down on the couch, ready to start the interview. So we did a 5-day interview, and even when the machine broke down, and I had to get a new tape recorder from Cal State Fullerton, he kept talking through the whole thing. So, and then it was scary because he had one suitcase that had nothing but pills in it, and I didn't have air conditioning in the house. I said, I'm going to kill Frank. I'm going to end up killing, James O'Mora. But it didn't happen, and we got to be really close friends and everything, and I saw him a lot after that, stayed in touch with him. Mitchie Wegland used to call both of us every Sunday morning. Mitchie Wegland was hectoring James O'Mora to finish his memoir.
Yes.
And then she would talk to me about it, but each time she talked to James O'Mora, she told me, she said, when I called James O'Mora, and James O'Mora was like me, he was an all-purpose sports fan from the time he was a kid. Every time I called James O'Mora, he's watching some damn sports program. And then I was feeling kind of funny because every time Nichi Bei called me, I was watching some sports program. So James O'Mora and I had a lot in common, and I've become very close friends with both of his sons and everything else.
Yes.
And I've interviewed the younger of his two sons, who is a prolific writer of philosophical books.
Well, James O'Mora is, one seminal figure in resistance history. Another is Harry Ueno, Manzanar Kitchen Workers Union worker, whose arrest for the beating of Fred Taguma in Manzanar was the spark for what you call the Manzanar riot, later the Manzanar revolt. And Art, my personal connection with you is, when I was cast in that TV movie A Farewell to Manzanar in 1975, and I was researching it, I used your article on the Manzanar revolt as inspiration for my character, because I was playing Fred Taguma in that movie. And for the first time in print, I saw an honest accounting of how the mass demonstration at Manzanar, which led to a shooting and bloodshed, was not just a protest against the government, it was also a protest against the leadership of our own JACL. And in that essay, you named names. And it really showed us that there was an alternate history to recover. And it did set me on the path that I'm on today, so thank you very much for that. But in terms of Harry Ueno, there was always the question, who beat up Fred Taguma, the beating that sparked the Manzanar revolt? And in your essay, you could not answer the question. You later interviewed Harry Ueno in the book that we showed us, Manzanar Martyr. And in the book, the question is not answered. Later on, Harry Ueno wrote to you later in 1994. And what did Harry Ueno tell you that you chose to withhold from the public until your book Barbed Voices a couple of years ago?
What he basically told me was that he was involved in the beating with 5 other people, and that he explained who they were. And then later on, I went up and interviewed him again at his place, and I was trying to get information for Martha Nakagawa, because Martha Nakagawa's father was at Loop when Harry Ueno was there, and so I was trying to get some information for her. But Harry said he didn't know the people from Tule Lake. They came to Loop kind of late, and he never got very well acquainted with them. But then all of a sudden he segued and he started talking more about the beating and everything that he and these other people participated in. And to tell you the truth, I'm against violence, but there's certain violence I justify. If somebody were to try to hurt my family members or something, had a gun or something, I would do whatever I could to impose violence against them to keep them from doing it. And in a sense, the Kibe at Manzanar, people like Harry Ueno, were so oppressed by the system there, was so rigged against them, that they didn't have any chance to be able to do the kinds of things other people in the camp could do. And Harry organized the Kitchen Workers Union. It was a large group at Manzanar, and they had a lot of power and stuff. And what they did was to mobilize this, and finally, it went over the end. Harry told me that he wasn't trying to maim,
Right.
Taguma, but he wanted to give him a little bit of pain so that he would back off and stuff. But that's the story on the Harry Ueno thing.
Art, let me read you real quickly from Harry's letter to you. I don't like to involve, but Fred Taguma, is getting on our nerve. I decide to lead them. And this is from your book, Barbed Voices. I plan every move around just a little after 6:30. We get together. I told not to injure him, Fred Taguma, but we're not going to let him control the camp at his will. Knock on his door, and I said, good evening, in friendly voice. Taguma, opened the door. I jump in first. He just seemed come out from the bed changing the cloth. He didn't have any clothing on. He kind of big man for a Japanese. Young people strike him 4 or 5 times. He was crying, "It hurt." I signal that enough, and we rush out the door, and everyone separate, different way. It was quick and few minutes action. So that was what Harry Ueno wrote to you, and you held that back until after his death, didn't you?
Yes, I did. I didn't want to embarrass him with it, but I also talked to certain people like Sue Embry, Martha Nakagawa, and Barbara Takei, and the consensus was that we weren't going to rush to judgment of a negative sort against him until later, and those things settled down. And so that's why I didn't release it at that time. But I had a propitious moment with that book to be able to release it, and I trusted Lane Hirabayashi so much, and Lane appreciated me using that forum to be able to air this particular story.
You know, I interviewed Harry Ueno, and Wendy Ng here also interviewed Harry Ueno, and Wendy bought a copy of Manzanar Martyr, and interesting fun fact, you say on the cover of Manzanar Martyr is a photograph, and the photograph shows the 4 or 5 men who were actually with Harry Ueno when they beat up Fred Tayama.
Yeah, it was almost like what they were doing was having a reunion, and that picture assembled them all. I mean, I couldn't believe that turned out to be the people. I used that originally when I used that photograph. I had no idea that those were the other people who might have been involved with them, but that's who it was.
So this is the cover of Manzanar Martyr,
That's it.
and Art Hansen says this is like a self-portrait of the gang or the group that roughed up Fred Tayama at Manzanar, sparking the Manzanar riot.
That was a very ironic thing. Yeah.
Okay, so we going back real quickly to your new book, Bitter Harvest. You know, Kenji's people added up the number of reviews you've done, and it was some number like 65 reviews over the past 14 years. And over the past 14 years, you were busy with, of course, the Omura memoir. So why did you want to take the time to write all those book reviews, those essays? What really drove you?
Well, Kenji, his mentor at Sacramento State was Wayne Maeda. And Wayne, when I first started doing some book reviews for Nichi Bei, modest number, Wayne was the lead book reviewer. And I admired the way that Wayne wrote his reviews. He provided a model for me. And so when he passed away in 2013, Kenji turned to me and asked me if I could, take on the role of lead thing. I said, well, I could succeed him, but I could never match him. I mean, he was too good. But once I got into it, and there was a proliferation of books, and Kenji was always so nice. Kenji Taguma was always so nice, and he let me have a choice of which books I wanted to review. So sometimes I would review 4 or 5 of them in one issue, and I looked forward to it. I loved reading the books, and I loved reviewing it. I want to tell you, the first book review I ever wrote, and the most important one I ever wrote, was in 1976, when I wrote the review for the American Historical Review of Years of Infamy by Michi Wegland. And I wrote that book, and Michi Wegland, Michi Wegland came to Los Angeles, and it was a time when you and Frank Chin interviewed me.
Yes.
It was a special celebration of Michi, but Michi didn't live too much longer after that. But Michi became very close to me. Not as I said, she called me every Sunday pretty much to talk to me, but she left me in her will the $20,000 that she got for her redress payment, and I used that money to start a series called the Michi
Yes.
Nishiura and Walter Wegelin multicultural series. And the last 7 years of my years teaching at Cal State Fullerton, the last 7 years, I edited a series that had 7 books in it. The first book was Tales of Tule Lake, and none other than Frank Abe wrote a beautiful review of that book. And
The
books
short
were all
stories by
quite-
a Hakuchin guy named
quite-
Barney Shallett at Tule Lake. He was a social worker at Tule Lake, and you collected his fictional short stories and published them.
Right. And so anyway, but Michi Wegelin, the book review that I wrote of her book, what I said at the end of the book review, after registering some critical commentary, what I said is this book will transform the direction of Japanese American World War II concentration camp scholarship. That henceforth people have to pay more attention. The second half of her book was brilliant. It was about Tule Lake.
Yes.
And it really emphasized the dark side of things, but it also emphasized the courage of the people at Tule Lake, the thing that Barbara Takei has been talking about for years, and that she and Roger Daniels have collaborated on writing a book that will come out at some point in the future when she's free of all of the bureaucratic work that she has to do trying to salvage the Tule Lake site.
Yeah. I mean, Years of Infamy, a whole chapter dedicated just to the Tule Lake Stockade. I mean, and Years of Infamy still holds up as an authoritative source on the stockade. We're going to wrap this up in a moment here, but I want to just point out a Nikkei Harvest is the first publication of the Nichi Bei Foundation, and we certainly hope that there'll be more future publications from the Nichi Bei Foundation along these lines. I want to, before we have a special guest announcement, are there any questions people have of Art Hansen yes? Chizu? Chizu has a question for you, Art. Chizu Omori.
Yes.
Hi, Art.
Hi, Chizu.
Hi. Oh, gee, you're looking pretty good, and I think you got a spiffy outfit on there. Anyway, I just want to tell you that we so appreciate you, Art, for all of your friendship and your devotion to this difficult, impossible subject of the incarceration and also the aftermath of it. You know, Art's series of interviews that he's done with people in the Japanese American community are just wonderful. I think Art knows more about us than anybody else around. So I just want to say hi, and you deserve a tribute, which you're getting today, and I hope to see you soon, Art.
Thank you very much, Chizu. Yeah, I remember when I first got connected with you back around the turn of the century, and Frank Abe at the same time up in Seattle. Yeah. And that was a very special sort of thing. Frank gave me a nice tour of the No Boy book, and then also Chizu and I did a lot of going around to different sites in Seattle, Japantown, and everything. And it was extremely important to me. And I love both of you. And I thank you for everything you've done for me.
Well, gee. Well, are we? What's the next thing? Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you, Chizu. Okay. Thank you, Art. We also want to bring in a friend of ours, Patricia Wakida, who is, I believe, in Fresno with some family business or something. But Patricia Wakida is a Yonsei from the Bay Area, and she actually did the cover for Art's new book. And while Max gets her set up here, I'm going to explain that Patricia did the cover kind of with a picture of Art Hansen reading a book. And in fact, the book he's reading is Persons and Patriots by Churston Lyon, although you can't really see it this is a linoleum tile block print with elements of the US and Japan flags on a landscape of Art's Los Osos home in the Los Osos Valley. And there's Patricia. So Patricia, go ahead and say hello.
Hello. Just saying hi. I guess this was unexpected. I was just told at the last minute that you would be zooming in, which makes it really great for those of us who were not able to come to San Francisco or be in San Francisco, to give you a big hug and to just thank you for decades and decades of all those interviews. I mean, as a Yonsei, I couldn't have learned and understood what had happened without the one-on-one interviews you have been doing for a generation before me. And I also wanted to thank you for all the service that you put into at Janum. I think it's just another chapter of your incredibly multifaceted career and the dedication and love that you put into it, because I think about Janum and the staff there and how much we gain from just your opinions and your thoughts and your brainstorming and your contributions and your connections for so long. So thank you for all of that. And then the whole cover thing was kind of just a happy accident where, of course, I would love to contribute somehow. And the fact that my art could go towards the art was just great. And I know it wasn't a surprise because I made Debbie take pictures of you in the chair. But it was fun. It was fun to put this together and to think about Los Osos and the strawberry fields and just the whole Central Coast, as well as all the other things that you put into this book and to your entire career and contribution and gift to all of us. So thank you, thank you, thank you, Art.
I want to thank you, Patricia. Patricia and I met when we had a big, curatorial staff at Janum when I was the senior historian there for 5 years. But the whole staff got wiped out pretty much. And Patricia came in and was chosen to be the person to run the whole curatorial thing. And I felt so sorry for her to have we had all these people with PhDs and everything else, and she came in there and she did a great job. And then one of the things we started under Patricia was we were going to redesign the main exhibit, Common Ground. And we brought in all these experts like Greg Robinson and
Eric
Muller, and we had all these people, the Eiichiro, Azuma, it was fantastic. But something, they still haven't revised, all these many years later,
they're working on it.
It's a work in progress, like the James O'Mora book was for 20 years. Yeah.
Well, you've just been such a mentor to so many of us, and I just want to thank you for that. There's so much more I could say, but I'll tell you personally.
But I want to thank you for the cover, because the cover has gotten a lot of attention. I got a lot of emails and stuff, and I buy Christmas presents every year from Patricia, and I look forward to them, calendars and different things like that. And she did a fantastic job, and we've had some of them have her make these. The cover is in black and white, which was a suggestion of I think Hirahara, Naomi Hirahara. Naomi suggested that it might work better, but we wanted to get a colored one, and so she's gotten us some colored ones, and now people want to get the colored ones because we have one hanging in our house here in Los Osos. It looks great, so we appreciated it, and we so much, and we loved the work that you did for the Masamoto book and everything, all of the things that you did in that. So, you were so field tested that it was great. So it's an honor to have you do this cover. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Well,
Thank you, Art.
Such a great friend. Thank you.
Thank you, Patricia. And so back here, we have another final speaker, friend of yours, former student Wendy Ng.
Hey, Art, this is Wendy Ng. Oh, I'm supposed to look at you over there, but I only see a computer. So I just want to thank you. I drove all the way up here to see you on Zoom, and I just wanted to thank you because you, in 1989, were one of the first persons that gave me validation of publishing the the article in the Association for Asian American Studies journal from the conference. You led me into the Oral History Association and then led to that long interview that's archived at the Japanese American Museum in San Jose with Harriet Ueno. So I just really want to thank you for all your time, the things that you've contributed not only to the Japanese American community, but to my career. So thanks a lot, Art. It's good to see you. Hi, Debbie.
Wendy, you're very welcome. I really appreciate you making these comments. I want to tell you that although I did a lot of interviews, I mobilized my students to be able to learn how to do interviews and everything. And people like Wendy and others contributed an awful lot. And so this wasn't a one-person show by any stretch of the imagination.
Thank you, Art. And now we're going to bring Koji back. It's good talking to you, Art. Hope to see you again soon. Here's Koji.
Thank you, Frank.
Thank you, and thank you to Frank and Art for that wonderful conversation. And Art, stay on. We have a few more things for you. I'd like to introduce next the president of the Nichi Bei Foundation, Kenji Taguma.
Hey, Art.
Hey, how's it going, Kenji?
We didn't tell them that you're actually next door. Drum roll, please. No, just kidding. We're really sorry that you can't be with us today, but we're going to celebrate you anyways, in the best way we know how. This book came together fairly, well, it was out there for a couple of years, but about a year, March last year, Sharon Yamato sent an email to a few of us, including Patricia, Naomi Hidahara, and your friend Curtis Nakagawa, who is funding the reception today, by the way. He sent some donation to fund a reception for you, even though you can't eat it.
Wow.
But anyways,
Wow.
but anyways, thanks to Sharon Yamato for getting us started, and Patricia for doing a wonderful cover, and Naomi for helping to lend her expertise. And I'll bring up a couple of other Nichi Bei folks in a minute. But first, we have a very special presentation, a surprise, because I like dramatic surprises. I'm going to call up Jennifer Bolin, who happens to be of Japanese descent, mother from Kita Kamakura. Jennifer is from the office, she's a legislative aide for Supervisor Dean Preston, District 5, who represents Japantown, and she has a special presentation for you.
Yeah, I can hold it. Hi, Art. My name's Jennifer, and as Kenji said,
Hi.
I'm a legislative aide for Supervisor Dean Preston, who we have the honor of representing Japantown in City Hall. And because of that, I get the pleasure of presenting you with a certificate of honor from the San Francisco Board of Supervisors. I'll read this special commendation to you, so you know what it says, since it's probably hard to read from the Zoom screen. The San Francisco, well, that didn't say that, sorry. The Board of Supervisors of the City and County of San Francisco hereby issues and authorizes the execution of this certificate of honor in appreciative public recognition of distinction and merit for outstanding service to a significant portion to the people of the City and County of San Francisco, to Arthur A. Hansen, in recognition of your distinguished career as Emeritus Professor of History and Asian American Studies at California State University Fullerton from 1966 to 2008, for documenting Japanese American resistance to their unjust oppression by the U.S. government during World War II, and for 15 years of insightful book reviews in Nichi Bei News, the City and County of San Francisco extends our highest commendation. Thank you for your lifetime of contribution to preserving and honoring the Japanese American historical legacy. So thank you so much, Art. We'll get this to you somehow.
Thank you. I'm overwhelmed by that. Thank you very much.
That means you get free parking for today and only for today. I wonder if you heard that. And then lastly, before we actually celebrate, while you're not here, I'd like to call up some of our Nichi Bei folks, Nancy Ukai, our board chair, Tomo Hirai, our staff writer, and especially Alec Yoshio McDonald, our founding associate editor and the person who actually edited your book. And as many of you know, this year marks the 15th anniversary of the Nichi Bei Foundation. There were many times, maybe 14 of those years, that we didn't think we would make it to 15. It's also the 125th anniversary of the Nichi Bei legacy with the Nichi Bei Shimbun, which makes this pretty old. Just want to recognize Alec because he was on our staff as the Nichi Bei Times closed, and he was a founder of the Nichi Bei Foundation. And I always choke up when I say this because Alec was the first to really volunteer. He said he had other income sources, so he volunteered the first 6 months of the Nichi Bei Foundation in order for us to pay other staff. And really, he was my role model, and I followed the same. Volunteering for about the same amount of time because we couldn't really launch with no seed funds. So Alec, I'm always deeply appreciative. I'm glad you're still writing for us, at least. But he's our founding associate editor. But I'd like to call them up.
And I'd like to thank Alex because he did a brilliant job of copy editing. It's so comprehensively good. I appreciate it very much. Thank you, Alex.
Okay, and Tomo Hirai, our staff writer here, and Nancy Ukai. And let's see, should we just put this close? Oh, is it here? Okay, so this is a Lifetime Achievement Award. We honor Nichi Bei News contributing writer Arthur A. Hansen on his lifetime of dedication and contributions to Japanese American history and his commitment to historical accuracy, and signed by Nancy and I, presented by the Nichi Bei Foundation and Nichi Bei News, July 27, 2024. So I'll get this to you. Art.
I want to make one other comment. I'd like to say that the last issue of the Nichi Bei, the summer book review section, was probably the best book review section in the publication history of the Nichi Bei. The thing that impressed me was the number of new reviewers you have and how talented they are. I've had to carry some of the load in the past, but I think I can share it very readily with the generation that is now represented in those pages. They were wonderful reviews, very conscientious, very insightful reviews. They were great.
Thank you. Yeah, we added a few new reviewers this year. Rachel Endo for University Washington Tacoma, Chrissy Lau, Koji Lau Ozawa, and Wendy Yamashita of our board have been adding their talents to our review as well. But I just want to say thank you, Art. After Wayne Maeda, my mentor, founding board member of the Nichi Bei Foundation, passed in 2013. We talked about this a lot. You really stepped in pretty seamlessly, not only taking over his reviews, but also being my main advisor in terms of all things Japanese American history. So it really means a lot to me, and I was honored and grateful that you asked me to write the foreword to the book that was in tribute to Wayne. You dedicated to Wayne, and then later Martha Nakagawa as she passed. But just glad to play a little part in honoring both Wayne and you. And we hope to do more book events, and hopefully you could join us again. But thank you, Art, for all your years of friendship.
I wish I could say I'd love to live long enough to be able to go to tributes for Nancy Ukai and for you, and many others up in the San Francisco area who have done so much to make San Francisco such a critical focus of Japanese American studies. Kenji has worked magic. I mean, he works too hard. He used to be a Yankee fan, and he used to like to watch sports, but he only sleeps 1 hour a night, and the rest of his time is poured into the newspaper and the rest of the things that he does. It's amazing. And Nancy Ukai is one of the most brilliant people I've met, and one of the nicest people I've met. And it's just so fantastic to have had the support of people like you, and for you to pay tribute to me, I pay tribute to you. Thank you.
Thank you, Art, and thank you, Patricia. Nancy Okai.
I just wanted to say that, we should have another session and talk about your contributions to oral history. You started an oral history at Cal State Fullerton, that program, which put the university on the map. Now, and as of 2008, there were 4,000 oral histories. You've done it probably a few hundred, and they are a gold mine. So thank you. We can't stop thanking you, and we keep thinking of more things that we want to acknowledge. So thank you, Art. Just a small tribute today. It's an honor.
Your wonderful words are very nice magic, music to my ears. Thanks very much, Nancy.
Okay, so the day is not over. We still have time to buy books, get signatures, and we have some sushi and sake and wine funded by Curtis Nakagawa and I guess myself too. But please buy books, support our artists, support our authors. We hope to do this again next year. We'll see. We put this together pretty quickly. But thank you for joining us in our 15th anniversary year. Also, big thank you to Masako Takahashi, the Henry and Tomoe Takahashi Charitable Foundation, for being our sustaining sponsor for so many years now. It's really, we really couldn't be here without the Takahashi Foundation. Has funded us as our largest funder, of course. And thank you to all our staff, our volunteers today. Edie Horner's at our CFO is at our sales table. You want to go say hi to her and buy some books. My sister Madi is at the table as well. Thank you to all the booksellers who came today. And we still have time to purchase books. And please enjoy the rest of your day. And thanks to Koji Laozawa for emceeing and all of our authors for coming today.